Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I'm going to address a topic that people have been asking me to address for quite a while, even since before Juggernaut Fitness opened up. And that question is, how does Eric Helm's data and this research that he just did while he's working on his graduate degree in nutritional science, how does it fit into what I'm saying about protein intake? Because I am one of the few people on here on YouTube who is recommending the type of protein intakes that top experts in sports nutrition recommend for strength athletes, not what magazines and what bodybuilders are often told to consume, that 1 gram or more per pound of body weight. I recommend 1 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. And I think that for the overwhelming majority, going above the 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight isn't going to yield any faster muscle gains or strength gains. But we get into the question of something like Eric Helm's data when we're talking about cutting and losing body fat and retaining lean body mass. So it becomes kind of an interesting conundrum there. Now, I want to say, as far as Eric's stuff goes, I've looked it over pretty well, and I know Eric. I've had enough interaction with Eric online. I actually like Eric. And the thing is, Eric is very passionate about what he does. He is very passionate about bodybuilding. He's passionate about contest prep. And so this isn't just his research that he's doing for his PhD. This is something that he takes very personally. And I think Eric's the type of guy that this data is probably pretty solid. He just seems like the type of guy, because this is something he is so passionate about, that I think he probably took a lot of care in making sure that this data is as accurate as possible, because this is data that's going to be distributed to his area of interest and his area of passion. I think the odds are he took a lot of care to make sure that it was done correctly. The problem that we run into is that, just like with any other study, though, this is just one single study. It adds to the body of knowledge, but this study needs to be replicated. Different variables need to be looked at more closely by other researchers and study to look at to make sure that it's all accurate. And even Eric would agree with that that's the way research works. You've got to have multiple different studies and multivariate analysis and peer reviews and meta-analysis to get to the core of a matter to find out what the truth is. You don't ever base your stuff off of a single study. And people make the mistake of drawing conclusions and extrapolations beyond what the data says. Now, what the data does show, it absolutely does suggest that higher protein intakes are going to help people retain lean body mass better. And I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone. And I think most of us agree that higher protein intakes on a cut help with satiation more. But as I'd like to caution people, I don't like protein to go too high if you can avoid it, for the simple fact that it's going to cost you carbs. And when you start lowering carbs, performance suffers. And your performance in the gym suffers, which is not what you want when you're on a cut. So it's really a balancing act. So finding that right amount of protein isn't necessarily easy. Now, the problem is that what his data suggests, and I'm not questioning that, I think this is dead on, that the leaner you get and the larger your caloric deficit, both of those factors will raise the amount of protein that you need to preserve lean body mass efficiently. And his data is showing numbers higher than even what I recommend for people to gain muscle. We're showing over 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. We're getting up towards that 1 gram per pound of body weight and higher. How does that apply to my channel? Well, a lot of that doesn't, because one, I recommend slow cutting. I do not recommend anybody ever use a large caloric deficit, because I am geared more towards athletes and athletic performance. An athlete would not cut fast. They can't afford the hit to their performance. They would generally cut slowly if they need to make a weight class. And I don't have that many competitive bodybuilders here, which comes to the next point of how lean are you really trying to get. And I think Eric's data is going to be dead on. I think for anyone who is going to be a contest prep coach, they better take a real close look at some of this material he's produced with this data and his research, because I think for a bodybuilding or a physique-based contest prep coach, this data is probably going to be pretty damned valuable, because this is what it specializes in. That's what he is studying, is getting people very lean while retaining their muscle mass. But for the average Joe, I would say for 99.5% of my subscribers, they are never going to try to get contest lean. So it does become a question of, do you necessarily need the higher end of the protein prescribed there if you're not going to be cutting much under 10% body fat as a male or under about 20% as a female? Because if you just want an ideal beach body, that's all you need. If you just want nice abs, that's as lean as you have to go. And I recommend to people, do not try to get shredded unless you have an actual competitive event that requires it. It's simply not worth it in terms of your health or the toll on your body and your mind. It's just not worth it. I don't think it's a good recommendation to recommend a non-physique competitor to cut to those ultra lean levels. So we do come into the question of, in light of the fact that I personally don't recommend people cut ultra lean who are not a physique competitor or a model of some type. I just don't recommend it. It's not worth it to go much leaner than that, purely for vanity. And in fact, the average person doesn't think that someone who's contest lean looks good. They find it revolting. Trust me, most women don't find men sexy who have striated glutes. That's too lean. And I don't recommend people fast cuts. Now, on the other hand, I also don't really have a problem with someone cutting who wants to bump their protein a bit because they feel like they need it for the satiation or the extra lean body mass preservation. I don't have a problem with that. I would just make sure that you're getting enough carbs and enough fat in your diet for your mood, for your performance in the gym, and for your hormone levels. That would be my biggest concerns, is that if you're bumping protein too high, is it costing you something else that you need? And if it is, then maybe you should reassess how quickly you are cutting, or you need to start adding more cardio in so that you can get your overall calories back up to help here. But all in all, I would remind people to not extrapolate what he has studied here and try to apply it to other areas where it may not be as helpful, which is, again, people who are slow cutting and people who are not cutting to ultra lean levels. The data might not be as useful. But if you are trying to prep for any sort of physique contest, or you are a prep coach who preps people for these sort of contests, well, I would say in that case that his data and research is going to be pretty valuable to you, and you should definitely be paying attention to it at that point. So hopefully that clarifies my stance on it, and any confusion as to why some of my recommendations don't necessarily completely agree with what Eric is recommending or people who have read his data are recommending based upon that. Alright guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you next time.